My name is Natalie. I am 34 years old, and I live in Chicago. I have been married to Adam for 5 years. We have a little daughter named Emma, and I have always tried my best to fit into his wealthy and demanding family. But at my father-in-law's 60th birthday party, in front of the entire family, the cruelest thing happened. My sister-in-law, Lily, raised her glass of wine and said something that froze the entire room. Too bad the little one doesn't look anything like my brother. Laughter erupted, and Adam, my husband, didn't defend me but instead nodded and added jokingly, "Maybe Natalie is hiding something." The whole table shook with mocking laughter. I sat there, my heart stabbing with every beat, yet my lips held a smile. I stood, walked slowly to the center of the room, and placed a small box on the dinner table. I looked straight at Adam and the whole family. If everyone enjoys games, then open this. The air froze, the laughter cut off, instantly, and every eye locked on the box. Inside was a truth that could change everything. Have you ever been turned into a laughingstock by your own family right in front of everyone? If you've ever felt the sting of doubt and betrayal inside your own home, share your story in the comments so I know I'm not alone. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because what lies behind that box is something you won't be able to look away from. From the moment Emma was born, I noticed the way everyone in Adam's family looked at her. It wasn't the joy and pride I had hoped for. My daughter had bright brown eyes, a round little face, and slightly tan skin like my father's. To me, Emma was the perfect reflection of love and hope. But in Adam's family's eyes, every small feature on her face seemed to become an excuse to whisper, leaving me with wounds that would not heal. During our first visit to Adam's family after Emma's birth, my mother-in-law, Caroline, held Emma in her arms. She smiled, called her adorable, but then tilted her head, studying Emma's features and softly murmured, "The baby looks different." The words were light as air, but I heard each one clearly. She laughed it off when she saw me watching, pretending it was nothing. But her eyes haunted me all night. Later, at afternoon teas when guests came by, I would hear the whispers floating in the air. Once, as I set Emma in her carrier in the living room, I overheard Caroline speaking with an old friend. "She's sweet, but she doesn't really look like one of the Pattersons." Her friend smiled knowingly. Nodding, I stood in the doorway, my stomach twisting, feeling pushed to the margins of the very family I was supposed to belong to. Adam, instead of easing my pain, made it worse. He began asking questions that stabbed straight into my heart. One night, while I was rocking Emma to sleep, Adam sat beside me and asked in a cold tone, "Are you sure about the timing of your pregnancy? Could she have been born earlier or later?" I froze, my chest tight with disbelief. After a long pause, I whispered, my voice trembling, "Emma is our daughter, Adam. Can you please stop doubting me?" But instead of remorse, he just shrugged, his eyes still scanning for clues. The questions came more often. When Emma was 3 months old, as we sat down for dinner, Adam looked at her and casually said, "Her nose looks sharper than mine. Don't you think?" I bit my lip, fighting back tears. I couldn't understand why the man who once promised to protect me now sided with baseless gossip. The older Emma grew, the more whispers there were. At a family gathering, when chatter filled the room, Lily smirked at Emma and said, "She must take after her mom's side a lot, because I don't see a bit of my brother in her." The room fell silent for a few seconds before moving on, but I caught Adam's averted eyes. No defense. No words. That night, after putting Emma in her crib, I went back to the bedroom. Adam was sitting on the bed and said quietly, "I just want clarity. Are you sure there wasn't a mistake?" I couldn't believe it. His doubts were no longer fleeting, they had rooted deeply in his mind. I felt like I was living with a stranger, someone suspicious of every breath his own daughter took. I began losing sleep. Each night, I lay awake, listening to Emma's soft breathing from the next room, asking myself why my happiness had warped into this. I didn't dare tell my mother, afraid it would break her heart. I couldn't tell friends, afraid they'd pity me. I just swallowed it all, forcing a smile every morning when Emma called out "Mommy" in her baby voice. The pain grew sharper when the whispers spread beyond the family. One day, I took Emma for a walk in the neighborhood. A neighbor smiled at me, but after I passed, I heard the whisper, "That baby doesn't look like her father at all." I turned back, catching their suspicious stare. I didn't need to guess where those rumors had started. The pressure at home grew heavier. Caroline still visited, still held Emma and called her little angel. But every time I caught her staring too long at Emma's face, chills ran down my spine. Lily never missed a chance to mock me. Her words sounded playful, but they were laced with contempt. Once, at dinner, Lily said casually, "Maybe Natalie has a secret she hasn't told anyone." The table burst into laughter. My face burned, but I bit my lip to stay calm. When I looked at Adam, hoping he'd stop it, he just forced a laugh and sipped his wine. That was when I realized I couldn't count on him to protect me anymore. He chose his family's approval over mine, chose the safety of their nods over standing by his wife and child. The cracks in our marriage spread everywhere. Every time Emma laughed in my arms, I felt both joy and sorrow. She was innocent, unaware that her own father questioned her existence. My pain wasn't from his family's scorn, it was from Adam, the one person who should have believed in me above all, pushing me down into doubt. Looks, words, silence, they all cut away at my trust like sharp blades. I was no longer the Natalie I used to be, the woman who endured quietly, hoping love would soothe every wound. I began to realize that if I didn't act, Emma and I would forever remain shadows in this house, trapped by endless whispers. I was born and raised in a modest family in the suburbs of Milwaukee. My father was a carpenter, my mother an elementary school teacher. My childhood was filled with simple dinners, the smell of pine wood on my father's clothes, and chalk dust on my mother's hands. Marrying Adam had taken me into a completely different world, bright, polished, luxurious, and so rigid I felt misplaced. I believed love could bridge the gap, but over time, I saw that my love was just a small piece in the grand portrait Adam's family had already painted. I tried everything to be worthy in their eyes. On holidays, I cooked elaborate meals, studying recipes from foreign shows to make them perfect. I once spent 10 hours in the kitchen roasting a turkey just right because Caroline said, "In this house, turkey must be moist and fragrant." When I served it, she smiled, nodded slightly, then added, "It's fine, but it would have been perfect with a splash of red wine." I swallowed my bitterness, smiled, and promised to do better next time. Every gift I chose was carefully considered material, color, meaning so no one could criticize. For Caroline's birthday one year, I ordered a custom Italian silk scarf in her favorite navy blue. She took it, smiled, and said, "I actually already have one just like this, Natalie, but thank you." Her words were soft, but they poured cold water over all my effort. The person who showed the clearest disdain was Lily. At 28, she still relied on her parents, but acted superior in every way. To them, Lily was the princess waiting for the right prince. To Lily, I was the intruder who had stolen her brother's attention. I remember one evening, the whole family gathered in the living room. Lily eyed my pearl necklace and remarked, "Pretty necklace. But Natalie, you must have saved for a long time to afford it, right?" Soft laughter rippled through the room. Adam sat next to me, and instead of objecting, he chuckled, as if it was harmless banter. My face flushed, but I forced a strained smile, swallowing my hurt. I once believed that if I cared for everyone enough, they would change their view. At Christmas, I decorated the house exactly in Caroline's favorite classic style, arranging red and white flowers, hanging stockings on the fireplace, choosing gentle carols. They nodded in approval when they walked in, but minutes later, they shifted to stories of extravagant parties their friends hosted with live music and rare imported wine. My efforts always faded into the background. What hurt most was Adam. He knew how hard I worked, how much I sacrificed, yet never spoke up. Each time Lily mocked me, he laughed it off or changed the subject. One night, I asked him after dinner, "Why don't you say anything when they make fun of me?" He sighed, "Just let it go. They don't mean it. If you react, it'll only make things worse." I stared at the man I thought was my partner, realizing he only wanted to stay the obedient son in his parents' eyes. At every family gathering, I felt like a background character in the play Adam's family put on. I was constantly compared to the other wives in the clan. Who was more successful, who was more graceful, who came from a better family. I always came out the lesser one in every comparison. Once, at a cousin's birthday party, I overheard Caroline whisper to an aunt, "Natalie is sweet, but compared to David's wife, she still has a lot to learn." I pretended to be busy soothing Emma so I wouldn't have to respond, but inside it felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over me. I had imagined so many times that if I was just patient enough, sincere enough, they would eventually open their hearts. But every effort only reminded me that, in their eyes, I would never be enough. I didn't come from a powerful family, I didn't hold a prestigious MBA, I didn't have a glittering network of connections. I was just Natalie, a woman from a middle-class family who gave up her youth to love Adam and now was struggling to survive in a house full of lights but devoid of warmth. I began to see myself becoming someone always chasing approval. Whenever Lily threw a cutting remark, I forced a smile to show I wasn't petty. Whenever Caroline compared me, I stayed silent, hoping my patience might change her opinion. But the more silent I was, the further they pushed. One evening after dinner, while cleaning up with Maria, the longtime housekeeper, she looked at me and quietly said, "You don't have to try so hard, Natalie. No matter how well you do, they'll always find something to criticize." I froze, my hands stopping mid-wash. In that moment, I realized it wasn't just me. Outsiders could clearly see my place in this household. Still, I wasn't strong enough to stop. I kept thinking, if I gave up, Emma would grow up surrounded by coldness and whispers. I didn't want her to feel excluded in her father's family. So I kept pushing myself. I kept arranging flowers, cooking, choosing gifts, preparing everything to create a perfect image. But slowly, I understood I was sacrificing my peace for recognition that would never truly exist. Each hollow smile from Caroline, each mocking glance from Lily, each silence from Adam, all felt like little blades cutting away at my dignity. Deep inside, I began to wonder, if I stopped one day, would I have anything left for myself, or would I lose it all? I noticed Adam changing in the smallest details. At first, I thought he was just tired from work. He came home later, spoke less, often sat staring in his study. But gradually, I realized the distance wasn't from stress, it was from something deeper, a secret he was hiding. One morning, while cleaning the bathroom, I found Emma's tiny toothbrush with several bristles missing. I remembered brushing her teeth the night before. It was perfectly fine. At first, I thought maybe she had bitten down too hard while teething. But a few days later, I caught Adam standing in the bathroom holding that same toothbrush. When he saw me, he shoved it into his pocket. "What are you doing?" I asked, my throat tight. He startled, trying to look casual. "Nothing. It's worn out. I was going to throw it away. But I knew that toothbrush was fine." I stared at him for a long moment, then chose silence. A coldness spread inside me, as if a door had quietly shut between us. From then on, I paid closer attention. One evening, I saw him accept a thick envelope from the mailman. When I asked, he forced a smile. "Just company documents." He quickly locked it in his briefcase. I tried to reassure myself I was overthinking, but the incidents kept repeating, each one carving the doubt deeper. One night, after putting Emma in her crib, I heard Adam in his study, speaking urgently on the phone. "Send the results to my private email, not the company one. I want absolute confidentiality." I froze at the doorway, my nails digging into the wood frame. Results? What results needed such secrecy? His words echoed in my mind like knives. In that moment, I understood. He was secretly running a DNA test behind my back. I felt myself turn to stone. All those years of proving myself to his family, all those months of caring for Emma with every ounce of love, yet my own husband, the man who once swore to trust me for life, was planting the cruelest doubt in me. That night, as he rummaged through drawers, I pretended to sleep. Through half-shut eyes, I saw him slip an envelope into his coat. The faint logo in the corner wasn't his company's. It was from a DNA testing lab I had seen advertised online. I rolled away, biting my lip to hold back tears. My heart pounded like it would rip me apart. I wanted to confront him, to scream that he was destroying our trust. But I knew he would deny it or worse, twist it back on me. I had lived in this family long enough to know they excelled at turning victims into culprits. The next morning, Adam sat at breakfast with Emma. She giggled, reaching for him. He picked her up, smiling faintly, but his eyes told another story. They weren't the eyes of a proud father. They were searching, calculating, questioning if this child was truly his. "She looks just like you," I said, trying to anchor him back. He only nodded, setting her down. "Maybe." My chest tightened. It wasn't only me he doubted. Our innocent daughter was being measured against suspicion too. In the days that followed, Adam locked his computer, changed phone passwords, evaded my questions. The house no longer felt safe. I was living with a stranger waiting for a verdict sealed in an envelope. Another evening when he went out, I searched his study. In a drawer, I found crumpled papers. Straightening them, I saw an appointment slip for test results, scheduled in just a few days. I sank into a chair dizzy. If he doubted me, why hadn't he spoken to me? Why secretly investigate, turning me into someone judged without a chance to defend myself? That night, I clutched Emma close, pressing my face into her soft hair. She stirred, nestling into my shoulder. I whispered to myself, no matter what, I would protect her from suspicion, from cruel whispers. She deserved to grow up in love, not in cold calculations. From that moment, a different resolve grew inside me. If Adam could run tests in secret, then so could I. But mine would be undeniable, so when the day came, and he or his family dared to put me on trial, I would have an answer sharper than any word. Love was no longer enough to shield me. Now I had to protect myself and my child. If I wanted to survive this marriage, I needed to prepare for the day the truth surfaced. I could no longer trust Adam's results. If he could sneak behind me, I needed my own certainty to protect Emma and myself. That morning I left Emma with my sister and drove out of the city, far from familiar eyes. My destination was a forensic center known for discretion and legally binding reports. In the sterile white waiting room, sweat gathered in my palms. When the staff called my name, I stepped in and placed a small bag on the table. Inside was a strand of Emma's hair, carefully wrapped in tissue, and Adam's toothbrush. The woman in the lab coat looked surprised but remained professional. "I'd like a paternity test," I said, my voice trembling, but firm. She nodded, handing me the forms. "The results will be ready in about 2 weeks. If you need an official notarized copy, we can arrange that." I signed each line, each signature feeling like a contract sealing my family's fate. Leaving the center, I drove home in silence, my mind spinning. I loved my husband, but he had forced me to do this. 2 weeks felt like a century. Every single day, I prayed the results would end all the doubts, even as my heart ached from the fact that it had come to this. When the envelope finally arrived, my hands trembled as I opened it. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. I collapsed into a chair, tears pouring down. I wasn't crying from fear anymore, I was crying from vindication and fury. Emma was Adam's biological daughter. I had known it the moment I held her in my arms at the hospital. But what about him? He planted doubt in me, forcing me to live like a defendant in my own home. I wiped my tears, carefully placed the notarized original into a document box, and asked the center to print several extra copies. I knew the day would come when I'd need them, and I refused to ever be caught off guard again. But I also understood this wasn't just about Adam questioning fatherhood. This was about the imbalance of power in our marriage. He controlled all the finances, made every big decision from savings to investments. I used to believe that was just part of his responsibility. Now I realized it left Emma and me completely dependent. If Adam ever wanted to erase me from his life, he could, and I'd have no way to defend myself. I quietly found a law office downtown. The attorney, a woman around 50, listened as I told her everything. She nodded slowly, then said, "You did the right thing by coming here. Never let yourself stay in a vulnerable position. We'll help you protect the legal rights of both you and your daughter." It felt like a sliver of light in the tiniel dark. I opened a separate bank account under my name and started transferring small amounts from my personal savings I had set aside before marriage. At the same time, I quietly gathered Adam's financial documents, account statements, investment contracts, strange invoices he tucked into drawers. I didn't steal them. I just photographed them and saved everything to a password-protected hard drive. Every time I did it, my heart pounded like a criminal's. But I reminded myself, no, I wasn't betraying him. I was just making sure I wouldn't be betrayed again. One night, when Adam got home late, I logged into his computer using a password he didn't know I had figured out. In his inbox, I found dozens of emails sent to a private account unrelated to work. Among them were confirmations for personal financial consulting services, and a draft of a life insurance policy that named only himself, no mention of me or Emma. I stared at those cold lines of text, my hands shaking. This man didn't just doubt his wife and child, he was building a world where we didn't exist. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath to calm myself. I knew I had to keep gathering evidence. If Adam had already written me out of his story, then I would be ready to defend my own. Some nights, I'd lie beside Adam, watching him sleep, remembering when we used to be in love. Back then, he promised no one would ever hurt me. Now he was the one hurting me the most. I didn't cry in silence anymore. I turned that pain into a quiet source of strength. I didn't know when I'd need to use that DNA file, or the financial records I'd been collecting. But I knew this. When that moment came, I wouldn't tremble. I wouldn't lower my eyes. I would have the truth. I would have the proof. And I would have the strength to shield Emma from the venomous whispers that had surrounded her since the day she was born. I was no longer the woman constantly bracing just to be accepted. I was becoming someone else, cautious, clear-eyed, and ready to fight back. I hadn't said a word to Adam. I hadn't asked a single question. Because in the game he started, silence could be the sharpest weapon of all. Robert's 60th birthday was held at Caroline's estate. It was a grand house in a wealthy North Chicago neighborhood, with wrought iron gates, perfectly trimmed flower beds, and glowing lights lining the walkways. Guests started arriving early, dressed in luxury, gift bags gleaming in hand. The air buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and music echoing across the great hall. I had spent a full week preparing for that evening. I ordered a massive cake from the city's most famous bakery, picked out the exact red wine Robert liked, and even arranged fresh flower bouquets for every centerpiece. I hoped the evening would be peaceful, that people might put aside their usual gossip to simply celebrate Robert. Emma wore the pale blue dress I'd sewn by hand, her hair tied with a white ribbon. She looked like a tiny angel. I hoped her presence would soften the tension that always lingered between me and Adam's family. The party began with soft jazz floating through the room. Robert gave a toast. Caroline smiled beside him, proud as ever. Adam hovered near his father like a loyal shadow, clearly trying to prove himself as the crown jewel of the family. I sat quietly, responding with a polite smile when guests spoke to me, just wishing the night would pass without incident. But that hope shattered quickly. As the family gathered around the long table, Lily glanced at Emma and gave a sharp laugh. She raised her wine glass and said with a smirk, "Shame the little one doesn't look anything like Adam. I mean, nothing at all like the Pattersons." The room fell silent for a split second. Then, like a fuse lit, laughter erupted around the table. I heard muffled giggles from Caroline, snickers from relatives, and worst of all, Adam's voice. He grinned, nodding slowly. "Maybe Natalie's been keeping secrets from us." More laughter. Glasses clinked louder than ever. I stayed still, my hands trembling under the table, but my smile never faltered. Inside, it felt like someone had poured ice water straight into my chest. All the preparation, every effort I'd made for a peaceful night turned to ash with a single cruel joke. Emma sat beside me, tapping her spoon on her plate, clueless about the laughter swirling around her. I looked at her and felt my heart twist. My 2-year-old daughter had just become the punchline to a family joke. I lifted my head and locked eyes with Lily. She smiled like she had just won something, pouring herself another drink. Caroline glanced at me, half pity, half agreement with her daughter. Adam turned away, chatting with a cousin, pretending the moment had been harmless. Right then, I knew I couldn't sit quietly any longer. I had waited for this. For the moment when all eyes would turn toward me. The moment I could turn humiliation into power. I set my glass down and gently pushed back my chair. The room seemed to pause at the sound. I stood, said nothing, and walked out. My heels echoed sharply against the polished floor, each step demanding attention. I heard whispers behind me. Where is she going? I didn't turn back. I climbed the stairs and walked into the guest room Adam and I were staying in. I opened the closet and pulled out the small white box I had hidden in our suitcase weeks ago. It was plain, unmarked, but what it held could shift everything. I cracked it open, saw the forensic seal on the papers inside, then closed it again. I stood before the mirror for a few seconds, adjusted my hair, and took a deep breath. My heart pounded, but there was no more trembling. I wasn't the woman begging for her in-laws' approval anymore. I held the truth now. I walked back into the dining hall. As I appeared in the doorway, silence fell. The laughter stopped. All eyes turned to me. I smiled gently and placed the box in the center of the table, right in front of Adam. If everyone here enjoys games, I said, calm and steady, then open this. A tense silence fell over the room. Robert frowned at the box. Caroline tilted her head. Lily forced a smile, but her eyes flickered with worry. Adam looked at me, visibly uneasy. "What is this, Natalie?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Why don't you open it and find out?" I replied, eyes locked on his. Adam reached out, slowly lifted the lid. Inside, a white envelope sat neatly, sealed with a dark blue forensic stamp. He pulled it out, his hand trembling slightly. As his eyes scanned the first lines, I saw the color drain from his face. Caroline furrowed her brow and leaned in. "Adam, what is it?" He swallowed hard but said nothing. I looked straight at everyone in the room, my voice calm but firm. "That is a DNA test. Official. Notarized. Undeniable. Emma is Adam's daughter 100%. The entire room fell completely silent. Not a sound. Lily went pale, her hand clutching her wine glass so tightly her knuckles turned white. Caroline dropped her spoon on the table, the clink of metal on china chilling in the silence. Robert's eyes narrowed at Adam, full of disappointment. I continued, my voice lower. "While I was up every night taking care of our daughter, while I gave every bit of love I had to this family, my husband was secretly doubting me. He even had a paternity test done behind my back. And tonight, while the whole family mocked my child, I realized it's time the truth came out." A wave of murmurs spread across the table. Lily opened her mouth. "Natalie, you're being a bit too..." I cut her off. "Too what? Too honest? Or too tired of being disrespected?" The room grew heavy with tension. Adam still held the paper, lips moving but unable to form words. I saw the panic and shame flash across his face. Emma kept giggling, clapping her hands at the sparkling chandelier overhead. Her innocent laughter rang out through the suffocating silence, making my resolve even stronger. I placed my hand gently on her shoulder and lifted my head to face the room. "This isn't just about me. It's the truth that everyone here needs to face. This little girl isn't a joke, isn't an excuse for anyone in this family to insult me. She is Adam's flesh and blood. And I will never again let anyone, husband included, doubt that." No one dared laugh. The whispers died down, leaving a long, heavy silence as if the whole house had stopped breathing. The room was so still I could hear the tick of the clock on the wall. Adam still clutched the DNA report in his hand, lips parted but silent. I looked him square in the eyes, then calmly pulled out several more envelopes from the box and placed them in the middle of the table. "This isn't everything," I said clearly. "If anyone wants the full picture, here it is." With his usual stern presence, Robert picked up one of the envelopes. He opened it slowly. The sharp eyes of a man who once ran a corporation wavered slightly. A few pages fell to the table, clearly printed emails from Adam to the lab. Robert's voice was hoarse but steady. "Adam, what is this? Why did you send these?" The room fell silent again. Caroline clutched her chest, face pale. I saw her lips trembling, about to protest, but then her eyes landed on the official seal at the bottom of the page. There was nothing left to deny. Adam quickly raised his hands. "Dad, Mom, I just wanted to be sure. That's all. I didn't mean anything else. Didn't mean anything else." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound echoing like dry leaves. "You secretly questioned me. You turned me into a suspect in my own home. And tonight you joined in mocking our daughter. You call that nothing?" Across the table, Lily suddenly stood up. Her eyes flashed with panic as she leaned forward, trying to snatch the pages from Robert's hand. "Give me those, Dad. There's no need to read all that. It'll just stir up more drama." But I was quicker. I placed my hand firmly on the stack. "No, Lily. You want to play games? Then pay for it with the truth. No one is stealing this from the table tonight." My words rang out, so sharp and cold that Caroline gasped softly. "Natalie," she whispered, as if begging me to stop. But I didn't step back. I had taken enough. Robert slowly pushed Lily back into her seat. He turned to Adam, his voice heavy. "You've disappointed me. You doubted your wife. You doubted the child I've called my granddaughter for 2 years. Do you understand what you've done?" Adam looked down, sweat beading on his forehead. He stammered, "Dad, I just heard things. I didn't want the family to be embarrassed if—" "That's enough." Robert's voice cracked like a gavel against the table. Everyone fell silent. "The only thing shameful here is your doubt. And tonight everyone has seen it." Caroline sank into her chair, both hands covering her face. The proud, elegant posture she always carried had vanished. Now she looked like a mother, heartbroken and lost. "God. Adam, how could you do this to your wife? To Natalie? To Emma?" Lily sat frozen, her face flushed. She avoided my gaze, but her trembling hands betrayed her. The smug smile was gone. So was the confidence. I turned, looking at each face around the table. "You've all seen it. This is no longer a joke. This is what I've lived with for the past 2 years, those sideways glances, those whispered comments, those cruel jokes." And instead of defending me, my husband stood with the doubt. No one responded. No more laughter. Just a silence so thick it choked the room. Emma sat in her high chair, drumming her little hands on the table, her wide eyes curious, unaware of the people. Tension. I bent down, gently brushing her soft hair. She was the one truth I held on to, the living proof that love doesn't need paperwork. But today, I had to use one. Because the one person who should have trusted me had refused to see what was right in front of him. Robert folded the papers and set them down. He looked Adam straight in the eyes, his voice slow but cutting. "You should get on your knees and apologize to your wife right here, right now. If you don't, you're not just losing my respect. You're losing this entire family." Adam looked up, eyes full of desperation. He turned to me, waiting for a nod of forgiveness. But I just stood there, cold and silent. I wasn't going to speak for him. If he had any honor left, he'd face this himself. Caroline looked up, her eyes wet. "Natalie, I'm so sorry. I didn't know Adam had. I was wrong, letting you carry the weight of those jokes alone." I heard her apology, but I didn't let it soften me. "I," replied calmly. "Forgiveness doesn't come from words. It comes from how you choose to treat me and my daughter from this day forward." Lily bit her lip. Finally, she muttered, I didn't think it would go this far. I cut in. "You meant to make me a joke. You meant to plant a seed of doubt in your brother's mind. But jokes sometimes come with a price we don't expect." My eyes locked with Lily's. She lowered her head and didn't say another word. For the first time in that room, I felt the power no longer belonged to them. No more of those dinners where I had to force a smile just to feel accepted. Now, they were the ones who had to face the truth I brought with me, a truth they couldn't deny, couldn't laugh away. I stood still and took a deep breath, letting the silence expand. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to prove anything else. The papers in front of them had already spoken for me loud enough to still the entire room. And in that silence, for the first time, I no longer felt like an outsider in this house. I held the winning card now. I let the silence linger, letting them feel the full weight of what had just been exposed. Then, when I saw every eye still fixed on me, I gently placed another file folder on the table. No one knew I had prepared it. And no one expected what was inside to be even more devastating. "In this box," I said slowly, "there's more than just a DNA report. I think everyone here deserves to see the full picture." Adam whipped around to face me, panic in his eyes. "Natalie, don't." I cut him off with a steady gaze. "If you get to hide things behind my back, then I have every right to protect myself with the truth." Robert reached out and took the stack of papers. His eyes narrowed as he read the figures printed on the pages. A series of banking transactions appeared, hundreds of thousands of dollars withdrawn from the joint account and transferred to a private account under the name Adam Patterson. Robert's face went pale. His voice came out heavy. "Adam, what is this?" Caroline leaned over, trembling as she read along. She clutched her mouth with both hands, tears streaming down her face. "Oh God, what have you done?" The room erupted in whispers. A few relatives exchanged looks of shock and disappointment, eyes locked on Adam. Lily sat frozen, her lips moving but no words coming out. Adam tried to snatch the papers back, his voice shaky. It's just a personal investment. It doesn't involve anyone else." I let out a soft, bitter laugh. "No one else? You withdrew money from our joint account, hid it from me, and funneled it into a secret fund I didn't even know existed. And you call that no one else?" Robert slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing through the room and startling everyone. "What have I taught you about responsibility, Adam? Your wife and your little daughter are sitting right here, and you've been hiding your finances from them. I trusted you, and you betrayed every bit of that trust." Caroline broke down in sobs, tears rolling down the face she always kept composed. She wept, "Natalie, I'm so sorry. I blamed you unfairly. It turns out my own son was the one at fault." "Oh my God." Lily, who had been silent this entire time, finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Adam, how could you? You always lectured me about responsibility, about protecting the family's honor. And now this." Adam turned to me, his voice pleading. "I did it for work. I needed some extra funds to manage things. You don't understand. I didn't mean to hurt you or Emma." I looked at him, my eyes dry and cold. "Didn't mean to hurt us. You doubted me, made me live in fear, then hid money, hundreds of thousands of dollars from me and your family. And you call that not hurting anyone?" Robert's voice was sharp. "Adam, from now on you have no control over the family finances. I will personally review every account. And if necessary, I'll bring in an independent auditor. I won't let the Patterson name be destroyed by you." Adam opened his mouth to protest, but the icy glare from his father stopped him cold. Caroline turned to me, her trembling hand reaching for mine. "Natalie, you've endured too much. I should have seen it sooner. I truly am sorry." I gently pulled my hand back, my tone calm but firm. "An apology can't erase what Emma and I have been through. I just want everyone here to understand trust isn't built on words. It's built on actions." The air in the room felt thick, every person with their own expression. Faces that once mocked me were now bowed low, avoiding eye contact. Lily sat silent, face drained of color. Robert sat rigid, his hands clenched, barely containing his anger. Caroline wept, her tears soaking into her handkerchief. And Adam, my husband, slumped into his chair, eyes empty. He was no longer the strong man I once loved, just a shell, exposed and shrunken under the weight of the truth. I picked Emma up. She giggled, still reaching her tiny hands toward the chandelier above. Her warmth gave me strength to stay upright in this storm of chaos. I raised my head, my voice clear. "Tonight, every secret has been laid bare. I don't need any more excuses. Everything I've done was to protect my daughter, to let her grow up in truth, not in whispers and lies." No one dared speak. Only the sound of Caroline's soft sobs and the ticking of the dining room's grandfather clock filled the space, each second amplifying the words I had spoken. I knew then the balance had shifted. The power in this house was no longer theirs. I, the woman they once dismissed, now stood firm, letting truth speak for me. Adam gripped the arms of his chair like he was holding on for dear life. His face was ghostly white, sweat glistening on his forehead. His voice cracked as he scrambled to hold on to whatever dignity he had left. I just wanted to be sure, Natalie. You have to understand. People were talking. I kept hearing them whisper, some even said Emma didn't look like me at all. I couldn't ignore it. I looked him straight in the eyes, steady and unmoved. No one forced you to do anything, Adam. You chose to believe the whispers out there instead of your wife. You let doubt kill the love in this house. The room went quiet again. Only Adam's uneven breathing and the rustle of Caroline's tissues echoed in the heavy air. Robert sat in silence for a long time. He was always a composed man, rarely showing emotion. But today, his eyes burned with a slow fire then suddenly flared. He slammed his hand on the table, the thunderous sound making everyone jump. "That's enough, Adam." His voice boomed like a storm. "I've tolerated your excuses for years. But today, in front of this whole family, you've exposed your own cowardice and betrayal." Adam lowered his head, stammering. "Dad, I was trying to protect the Patterson name." Robert nearly shouted. "Honor? You think hiding money, doubting your wife, letting your sister mock your daughter, that's honor? You don't even understand what the word responsibility means anymore." The air turned heavier, suffocating, as if the whole room were holding its breath. A few older relatives exchanged pained glances, sorrow written across their faces. Caroline sat slumped, shoulders trembling. She opened her mouth but could only sob. Lily sat pale and silent, her hands tightly clasped, unable to look up. I stood there holding Emma. She didn't understand a thing, still laughing, reaching for a glass on the table. Her innocent joy cut like a blade through the tension, especially after they had just heard Adam question her blood. Robert turned to me, his gaze heavy but firm. "Natalie, I owe you and Emma an apology. We all let you suffer in silence. But, I promise you, I won't let this truth be buried." Adam suddenly jumped to his feet, voice desperate. "Dad, please. You can't just take Natalie's side and condemn me. I'm still your son, your only heir." Robert stared at him, each word dropping like a hammer. "Heir? You think someone who dares to betray his wife's trust and hides finances from the entire family is fit to run Patterson Enterprises? From this moment on, I will be re-evaluating the entire transition. And don't even dream that the role is yours by default." His declaration cut through the air like a blade. Murmurs swept across the room. Some of the younger relatives covered their mouths in shock. The elders just sighed and shook their heads. Adam crumbled. His knees buckled, and he collapsed into the chair, eyes bloodshot. "Dad, you can't do this to me. I've spent my whole life preparing to take over the company. I've sacrificed, I've contributed." Robert cut him off. "Sacrificed? What have you sacrificed besides your own integrity and character? Patterson Enterprises doesn't need someone who's secretive and deceitful. It needs a leader who places family and truth above all." I quietly held Emma tighter against my chest. Robert's words rang like a bell signaling the collapse Adam had built with his own hands. Everything he had clung to, his parents' trust, his standing among the relatives, his place in the company, was falling apart right before everyone's eyes. Caroline couldn't take it anymore. She broke into sobs, burying her face in her hands. Lily trembled, struggling to say something. "Adam, I didn't expect." But her voice caught in her throat. She couldn't go on. In his desperation, Adam turned to me, his voice cracking. "Natalie, say something. Tell them I'm not as awful as they think. I got caught up, that's all." I looked at him calmly. "Adam, I have nothing more to say. The truth is right here on the table, in front of everyone. I stayed silent for too long, while you chose denial and secrecy. Now you have to face the consequences." A long silence fell, broken only by the ticking clock in the grand room. The warm golden lights above cast down on Adam's face as it crumbled with every passing second. Robert leaned back in his chair, eyes closed, as if his decision had drained him. When he opened them again, his gaze had changed, firm and cold. "Adam, from today forward, I no longer consider you the sole heir. If you want to prove your worth, you'll start from nothing. And don't expect anyone in this family to rescue you. You made your choices. Now live with them." That pronouncement echoed through the room like a final sentence. Adam clutched his head, hunched over, too broken to protest. I carried Emma, feeling both a weight lifted and a wrenching in my heart. The scene didn't bring me joy or triumph. It left only a bitter hollow where love had once lived, now reduced to rubble. That night, I left the Patterson estate, Emma in my arms. The sound of collapse still ringing in my ears. No one stopped me. No one said goodbye. Robert's eyes stayed cold on Adam. Caroline wept, head bowed. Lily turned away as if pretending none of it had happened. But I knew it had gone too far to pretend anymore. I called Julia my closest friend since college. She didn't ask much. She just opened the door, pulled me and Emma into a quiet hug, and set up a cozy room for the two of us. Julia's suburban apartment was peaceful, with a small backyard filled with white roses that Emma immediately adored. The next morning, she was already running around the garden, laughing as if no adult storm could reach her tender world. But I was different. I saw it clearly. My marriage was standing at the edge of collapse. Adam started calling, texting non-stop. Sometimes his voice broke with pleading, sometimes he promised change. He showed up at Julia's door, standing silently for hours in the rain. One evening, I glanced through the window to see him, soaked through, holding a limp bouquet. Julia gently touched my shoulder and asked, "Are you going to give him another chance?" I stayed silent. My heart wasn't stone, but my mind bore every scar Adam had left. Eventually, I agreed to meet him at a quiet cafe. Not to forgive, but to draw clear lines. Adam sat across from me, visibly gaunt, with shadows under his eyes. He clutched his coffee tightly, voice hoarse. "Natalie, I was wrong. I let fear and pressure get the best of me. I betrayed your trust, I know that. But I don't want to lose this family. Please, give me a chance." I took a deep breath, keeping my tone even. "Adam, I'm done believing empty promises. If you truly want to fix this, I have 3 conditions." He looked up, eyes sparking faint hope. I laid them out, clearly. First, you have to commit to long-term marriage counseling with me. Not a few token sessions, at least 1 year. Consistently. Second, our finances must be fully transparent. No hidden accounts. No shady transactions. And third, you must apologize to me and Emma publicly in front of the entire family. They need to know the real story, not some distorted version. Adam was stunned. He swallowed hard, staring like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Natalie, does it have to be that harsh? I just want you to come home." I looked him straight in the eye. "If you can't do these things, then coming home won't happen." I refused to raise our daughter in a family built on lies and suspicion. That felt like the final cut. Adam bowed his head, hands trembling. He didn't answer right away. Then finally he nodded. "I'll do it, if that's the only way to keep you." I didn't respond. I stood, left my untouched coffee behind and walked out. I needed action now, not words. In the following days, I focused on Emma and treasured the quiet haven Julia gave us. But one afternoon, just after I'd put Emma down for a nap, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting Adam. It was Caroline. She wore a beige coat, looking far more worn than usual. When I opened the door, she immediately took my hand, her voice trembling. "Natalie, I need to talk to you. Please. Just a few minutes." I invited her in. Julia quietly slipped away to give us privacy. Caroline sat, wringing her hands, eyes fixed on the floor. At last, she sighed. "I have to confess something. I was the one who first suggested Adam get the DNA test. I didn't force him, but I planted that doubt. And I'm so ashamed." My chest tightened. I forced myself to stay calm. "Why would you do that?" Caroline looked up, tears threatening. "You know how the Patterson name is wrapped in honor and legacy. From the day Emma was born, people started whispering that she didn't look like Adam. I listened. I let it get to me. I thought I had to be sure to protect the family line. But I didn't realize I was tearing apart something sacred. Natalie, I'm so sorry. Truly." I studied her. In her eyes, I saw genuine remorse, none of the usual superiority. She was a mother wrestling with her own conscience, not a matriarch asserting power. "What you did broke everything," I said softly. "Not just Adam. The entire family chose rumor over love." Caroline bowed her head, tears falling into her hands. "I know. And I'll do anything to make it right. If you'll let me, I want to admit my part to everyone. Adam shouldn't take the blame alone. I was part of this, too." I was surprised. I hadn't expected Caroline to go that far. But the sincerity in her voice softened something in me. "I don't know if I can forgive you just yet," I said quietly. "But your confession, it matters." She nodded gently, eyes red. Standing to leave, She placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Natalie, you're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. And Emma, she deserves a real family. I just hope it's not too late." She left, leaving me in a room washed in golden sunset. I held Emma close, my heart tangled with emotions. Amid the wreckage, perhaps a faint light still flickered. But the path forward would depend not just on Adam's choices but on mine. To hold on, or to finally let go. 2 months later, under the morning sun that bathed the city in gold, I stepped out of the car with Emma in my arms in front of Patterson Corporation's newly inaugurated building. A long red ribbon stretched across the main gate, photographers swarmed the entrance, camera flashes flickering non-stop. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, but inside, I was still. This wasn't a day of joy for me, but it was a day I had to be present for. Adam stood on the main stage, his face gaunt, suit neatly pressed, but his eyes had lost the confidence they once held. Beside him, Robert and Caroline sat in the water-high front row, their expressions stern. I chose a spot farther back, holding Emma close to my chest. She playfully wrapped her arms around my neck and whispered, "Mom, why is everyone staring?" I smoothed her hair and gently replied, "Because today is an important day, Emma. But you only need to be here with me." When it was time for the speech, Adam stepped up to the microphone. At first, he said the usual things, thanked the partners, the family, the staff for their hard work in launching the new branch. But then his voice dropped. The room fell silent. "There's something I need to say publicly, in front of our family, our business partners, and our employees." He paused, taking a long breath, his hands gripping the wooden podium tightly. "I once betrayed my wife's trust. I let blind rumors lead me, instead of putting faith in the woman who stood by me. I hurt Natalie, and indirectly I hurt our daughter, Emma." There was a ripple of whispers across the crowd and the cameras shifted toward me. I kept my expression calm, not avoiding, not smiling. Adam continued, his voice trembling but firm. "Today, in front of everyone, I want to apologize to Natalie. I'm sorry for making you endure doubt, injustice, and loneliness inside your own home. And I'm sorry to Emma, for not protecting her from the fracture between her parents. I promise, from now on, to live transparently, to make amends with actions, not with words." Caroline dabbed tears from her eyes. Robert sat upright, his gaze still sharp, but with a rare glint of acknowledgement. I remained silent, standing in the back holding Emma. In that moment, I was no longer the scrutinized, doubted wife. I was the witness, the one holding the key to what came next. After the ceremony, several people approached me. Some partners gave a quiet nod as a sign of respect. Some relatives avoided my eyes. I didn't care. I just wanted to go home, to leave behind the curious stares. A few days later, I officially began a project I had long dreamed of. I rented a small office in an old building, where the morning light streamed through the glass windows and cast a golden glow across the wooden desk. I named the firm Horizon Legal Consulting. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but its purpose was clear: to provide legal support to women suffering emotional abuse in marriage. When I hung the first nameplate outside the door, Emma danced around, squealing, "Mom has her own company." Julia stood beside me, beaming with pride as she patted my shoulder. "You've come so much farther than you ever imagined." I smiled. She was right. I wasn't just a woman standing behind a powerful family anymore. I wasn't just a shadow in the Patterson banquet halls. I had found my own path. On the first day the office opened, a young woman walked in. Her face was pale, dark circles under her eyes, her voice trembling. She spoke about her husband who constantly belittled her, controlled her, hurt her every day with his words. I listened, no judgment, no interruption. When she cried, I handed her a tissue and gently said, "You are not alone. There are laws. And there are people ready to help you reclaim your voice." At that moment, I saw a familiar flicker in her eyes. It was the same light I had once longed for in my darkest days. I knew then I was exactly where I needed to be. Emma sat drawing in the corner of the office, carefree, as if the world outside had never stormed. Looking at her, I realized something essential. The DNA envelope once used to deny her now stood as a symbol of truth. It not only proved that Emma was Adam's biological child, it proved something much greater. It proved the journey I had walked. From a wife who suffered in silence, to a woman who stood tall, independent, and fully in control of her future. Life can change in an instant. But from those moments, we can also choose how to move forward. And I chose not to return to silence. I chose to rise. This journey doesn't end here to recount pain. It ends as a reminder to me, and to everyone listening, that trust, once broken, leaves cracks that may never fully disappear. But even through those cracks, we can find strength. To stand. To rebuild. To write our story on our own terms. I chose to become a woman of agency. To walk a path that defends those still suffering quietly. What about you? If you were in this story, what would you choose to forgive and rebuild, or to walk away towards something new? I'd truly love to hear your thoughts, because each of us sees a piece of ourselves in this kind of journey. And if you'd like to hear more real, emotional stories about family, love, and the choices that change lives, follow the channel so you don't miss what comes next. Who knows? The next story might speak directly to your heart.